we're going to attempt to walk across an entire country in one day today. The starting point is at this church in a place called Johnny. I hope that I am pronouncing that correctly. A few little statistics before we start. This is the 10th smallest country in the world. It is 102 square metres, which is actually smaller than New York City. The country would only take about 40 minutes to drive across, but it's actually 14 kilometres in total, which is around 9 miles. There are a few little parts that are impassable, which we will talk about at the end, but for the most part I will show you on Google Maps where we are walking across. We do actually have the sea in view, which I will show you once we get on the way. So we will literally be able to see the sea from one side and the sea from the other, proving that we are in fact walking across an entire country in one day. Let's hope we have no mishaps and we don't get lost along the way, because the route is not very well or clearly marked. And that was definitely foreshadowing if I ever saw it, because what we were soon about to realise is the many sources that tell us all the different distances prove to be quite wrong, because what they haven't taken into account on Google Maps as the crow flies is just how up and down the Great Fault Line is, which the Victoria Lines follows, and also the season in which you are walking and how a lot of the path is quite overgrown. We were soon also to learn that the Victoria Lines passes through 3 main forts, all of which were closed off to the public. So in some parts, as you're about to see, we had to take a slight diversion, amongst other problems along the way. Do you feel strong about this walk?
Easy.
Do you think you're going to smash it?
9 mile, mate. Do this in my sleep.
Okay. So just behind me here, you can see what is left of the west coast part of the wall. It's not much. That is about 1 kilometre's distance. It goes to just sort of a dirt path and it drops off at the cliff, and it is practically impassable. This first piece of the wall here that you can see is the first major part of the Victoria Lines, or what is known as the Great Wall of Malta, which is the subject. If you want more specifics about the Great Wall of Malta, it's going to be the subject of another video. Today we're focusing on the route, the walk, the scenery, if we get lost, and everything that happens along the way. If you want a little bit more of the history of the Great Wall of Malta and that type of thing, that will be the subject of another video. So let's get underway. What are you saying?
That's number 3.
Yeah.
We passed number 2 about 1/4 mile back.
Okay.
So we just followed the numbers up.
Okay.
And then hopefully we end up in the right direction. If not, then fuck it.
So I started this trail being optimistic that I could do it in my sandals, even though people said obviously wear hiking boots. I thought I'll take my hiking boots along just in case within 1 kilometre into it I've needed to put my hiking boots on. It is very, very rubbly underfoot, so if anybody comes and attempts to do this walk across Malta, then I advise hiking boots. So for this section we have had to come back out onto the road a little bit, because there was a sty going through a farmer's field where it said private property. Apparently that's not entirely true and there is a public right of way, but they have put Victoria Line signs up suggesting you can go around all this farmer's land. That's what we're doing. It's now a case of where do we pick the lines back up again though, and looking for signs because it is not very well signposted at some parts.
I want to walk on the road.
Well, what if you get done for trespassing?
You can't, can you? Oh, that's bullshit.
Yeah, but you can if they're in a public right of way.
Can't get enough trespassing if there's no gate.
Right. So everyone, we've had the first hurdle, quite literally. We got to the end of the first actual properly marked trail, and the signpost for Victoria Lines, we don't know if it had been knocked in the wind, but it wasn't pointing in the right direction, or maybe somebody's done that on purpose, and it made us veer slightly off of where we needed to be on the trail. So we're going back and getting onto it, but it is very unclear. Guys, we are finally back on track with the wall right at the side of us. I'll show you a view down the valley. A little bit rockier under terrain here. We're going to go across there. This is what locals refer to as the Great Wall of Malta. It's pretty impressive. We're enjoying it so far. How's it going? There is a very, very steep sheer drop off at the side of the cliff, so I advise being very careful on this part if you come to walk it. So just where the Brinjema Gap ends just there and it starts to turn into the Dwerja lines, there is a little path that veers off to the left. We momentarily took it. It's not wrong, it's just where the wall isn't as well maintained, so you can veer off to either side. Johnny took the sheer cliffside. It has got incredibly good views, but I decided I didn't fancy breaking my ankle and not having the use of my ankles for the rest of the time here. So I'm on the still very rubbly part of the wall, but not quite as dangerous as that. So let's continue on. This down here is the Dwerja lines, which I am going to show you as we walk along. So a few things to point out to anybody in case you think of doing this walk across Malta. We are obviously following the Victoria Lines, which also runs along the Great Wall of Malta. So it means passing through three main forts: Fort Brinjema, Fort Moster and Fort Madliena. We thought all this was going to be quite straightforward despite doing lots of research, only what we didn't know is that the forts, with them being military run and privately owned now, they are blocked off to the public, meaning you have to go around and do quite a bit of road walking and kind of veering away from the path in parts, which became quite problematic in the latter half of the walk. We were advised to walk from the Fort Bengemma side back towards the Fort Madliana side because that is the nicest side of the walk, and you're also walking back into civilization rather than away from it for safety. However, things got a bit tricky a bit later on, as you're about to see. So we currently think we are about halfway, and there is where we set off from on the left, and obviously we're walking entirely across the country, and we're at such a vantage point now that we can see the other side. So that is what the wall turned into for a short amount of time, and then it says we can no longer go on that part, so we have to go back out onto this path for a while. But we are kind of walking between the two walls because there are two outer walls. It's actually April when we're doing this walk. It is quite overgrown, the path in some parts. It's at this point we had passed around 20 people throughout the walk, which really in the great scheme of things isn't that many. Everybody was always walking in single file. Somebody told us that at Fort Moster, the rest of the wall, or the walk rather, along the Victoria lines is actually impassable. So many people only actually walk to Fort Moster because the rest of it is either roadwork or impassable. And at this point, it's only about 1 kilometre from the sea. You can actually see the sea. So that is where many people actually finish or start the walk, which all in all is actually 6.5 miles, meaning that Google got it wrong in quite a lot of places in regards to the distance. Furthermore, it wasn't really a simple walk because it was really uneven and rocky terrain underfoot and up and down the natural fault line, which is an almost sheer cliffside in some parts. Quite a difficult hike, despite what Google might say. Google is not always right. We were then informed by some locals having a picnic that Fort Moster is also completely closed to the public, and so the best place to end the walk is actually at the Rotunda in Moster, or as I've been saying, the Moster Dome, which runs parallel, so it's the same distance. We followed the ridge for quite some time after we got past the halfway point, and it's now basically come back out onto a bit of a main road. Now come out onto a bit of a main road as we head towards Moster, which I'll show you in the distance, because obviously it's a very, very old wall. Parts of it have fallen into disrepair, but we have literally now walked across the breadth of Malta, but we will show you the final place when we get to Moster, which is as far as you can physically walk, and it's like 1 kilometre from the coast where it drops off.
It's hot, don't forget sun cream.
So we're just heading to Moster in the distance, which is practically on the coast. And I just thought I'd update you all on the fact that, obviously, I said earlier on the walk that I have got my trusty barefoot trail shoes on. But look what Johnny is wearing. He has done this whole walk on all that rubble in his Crocs, and he's even worn a hole.
My sock out.
He's worn a hole in his sock. Yes, he's done socks and Crocs so that he doesn't rub his feet. We're just nearly up in Moster now, up near the Cathedral Dome, and then when we get up there we're going to sit down, have a nice glass of something cold and refreshing, and I cannot wait to take my shoes off, because normally these boots are comfortable, but I think that my feet have swollen in the heat and they're hurting. Let's go. Is that the flags marking the finish post at the end? We hope so. I am ready for a nice refreshing drink. Obviously we did bring water, but still. What an absolutely glorious sight. Peeking round the corner. Right, it's time to go get a drink and take our shoes off. Oh, look, there's a Costa right there. To quickly recap our route, I think this evidences via Strava just how up and down and zigzag this route really is, because we're following the natural fault line of the Victoria Lines. It is not a smooth as the crow flies path, as you can see, and it was quite warm, in fact very hot despite the clouds, so I think we did quite well with an end pace of under 20 minutes a mile. We have finally reached the centre of Mosta, also known as Fort Mosta, which is the official end of the Victoria Lines, or the Great Wall of Malta, as many people refer to it as. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed watching us walk the breadth of Malta, walking across a country in one day, but you also thought you might like to know more of the details about the actual wall itself, please check out our other video about the specifics of the Great Wall of Malta. How do you feel, Johnny, having completed the walk?
Easy, bigger time over.
The shoes are off. Can't wait. The relief. Now time for a drink. You ready for this first sip? Cheers. That was very, very well earned.
Still gonna walk back, yeah.
Oh, your other socks got holes in too? Oh dear. But the Crocs held up.
Yeah, always do.
I'll see you in the next one. Bye!